The desert stretched far and wide, silent and endless, its surface cracked under the burning sun. In the middle of that wasteland was a pit, a hole dug into the earth where no life should remain. Inside the pit lay a woman, her skin dry, her lips broken, her eyes staring at the sky without hope. She was not human. Her body carried strange markings, patterns burned into her skin by her own people, markings that told the world she was useless. Across her arms and back were words scratched in rough symbols. The meaning was cruel and sharp. "Not breeding material," she whispered weakly into the dry air, her voice more like dust than sound. "Bury me here, let the dirt take me, I am not worth saving." Her voice carried upward, carried by the wind, but no one answered. For days she had been alone, left in the pit as punishment, as rejection, as if she were less than the ground beneath her. Every hour her throat burned for water. Every moment her chest ached for air. And yet she did not pray for rescue. She prayed for the end. She begged for silence. Far away, a lone human traveler walked across the sand. He was tired, his boots heavy, his canteen nearly empty, but his spirit remained alive. He searched for a place to rest, maybe for shade, maybe for a cave. Instead, he heard something he did not expect. A whisper, thin and broken, carried by the hot wind. He stopped, listening carefully, his eyes narrowing against the sunlight. Again it came, faint but real. "Bury me here, I am not breeding material." The human frowned, unsure if it was the heat playing tricks on his mind. Still, he followed the sound, stepping carefully through the sand until he found the pit. He leaned over, and his eyes widened. Inside lay the alien woman, her body thin, her skin dull, her eyes open but fading. For a moment he thought she was already gone, just a broken shell waiting for the sand to cover her. But then she blinked, slow and weak, and the whisper came again. "Go away, leave me here." He felt his chest tighten. This was not what he had expected to find in the middle of nowhere. He looked at her markings, the words carved into her flesh, and his jaw clenched with anger. He did not understand the language, but he understood the cruelty. No one should be left to die like this. No one should be buried alive while still breathing. He lowered himself into the pit, ignoring the heat and the dust. The woman weakly raised her hand to stop him, her fingers trembling. "Do not touch me," she whispered, her eyes sharp with both fear and shame. "I am cursed. I am useless. Let me die here." The human shook his head slowly. "You are still alive," he said in a steady voice. "And while you breathe, you are not useless." She tried to turn away, her tears mixing with the dirt. Her heart carried years of rejection, years of being told she was nothing. Now, even when someone offered her a hand, she could not take it. It felt easier to sink into the pit and let the sand cover her forever. The human pulled his canteen from his belt and pressed it into her hand. Her lips moved as if to refuse, but her body betrayed her. The thirst inside her was too strong, and she drank. The water touched her throat like fire and mercy at once. Tears slid down her face as she whispered again, "Why do you save me? I am not worth saving." He looked down at her, his eyes steady, his voice calm but firm. "Because no one deserves to be buried alive," he said. His words echoed in the pit. Cutting through the silence, the woman closed her eyes, torn between anger and a fragile, unfamiliar feeling. Hope. For the first time in many days, she was not alone. For the first time in her broken life, someone climbed down into the dirt, not to throw stones, but to lift her out. The desert wind howled above them, sharp and hot. The sun lowered in the sky, turning red like fire. The human knew the night would soon come, and with it the cold. If he left her here, she would not last till morning. If he stayed, he might not last either. But his heart did not allow him to walk away. He would carry her, even if it meant risking his own life. The woman's breath came slow, her eyes heavy, her body weak. But in that weakness, something began to shift. The pit that was meant to be her grave now became the place of her meeting, a meeting that would change both of their lives forever. The desert night was cold, the wind sharp like knives. The human wrapped his cloak tighter as he sat near the fire, the alien woman lying only a few feet away. He had carried her out of the pit, step by step, his back aching, his legs shaking, but he never stopped. She had been so light, like carrying a bundle of dry sticks, yet the weight of her despair was heavier than stone. Now, as the flames flickered, her eyes opened slowly. She looked at him, then turned her face away. "I told you to leave me," she whispered, her voice weak but hard. "Why did you not listen?" The human poured a small cup of water and placed it near her. "You are still alive," he answered. "That is enough reason to help." Her lips trembled, anger mixed with shame. "You do not understand," she said. "I am not like your women. I was tested. I was measured. They said I cannot bear children. I am useless, worthless, broken." She spat the words like poison, as if speaking them would push him away. But the human did not move, his eyes steady in the firelight. "You are not broken because someone said so," he replied. "They threw you away, but that does not mean you are trash." Her chest rose and fell sharply. Her eyes filling with tears she tried to hide. "You should not waste your time," she said. "My people marked me. They wrote it into my flesh. Not breeding material, do you see the scars will never go away?" She held out her arms, showing him the cruel symbols burned into her skin. The human looked at them with quiet anger, his jaw tight. "I see cruelty, not truth," he said softly. "I see what they did to you, not who you are." Her heart shook at his words, but she clenched her fists, refusing to let them touch her soul. "You speak like you know me," she said. "But you don't. I begged them to end me. And they gave me the pit instead. I wanted the dirt to cover me, I still do." The human leaned closer, his voice low, firm, but calm. "You wanted death because no one gave you life. But I will not bury someone who still breathes." For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of fire and the whisper of desert wind. The woman turned her face away again, ashamed of the tears on her cheeks. The human sighed, pulling a piece of dried bread from his pack. He broke it and placed it in her hands. She stared at it, then at him, her lips trembling. Slowly, unwillingly, she ate, the taste of simple food bringing a painful reminder that she was still alive. Through the long night she lay awake, listening to his quiet breathing. Her mind screamed that she should run, crawl back to the pit, beg the sand to swallow her. But her body betrayed her again. It wanted the warmth, it wanted the water, it wanted the food he gave. And somewhere deeper, something else stirred, something small and fragile. A seed she did not want, hope. When morning came, the sun rose harsh and merciless. The human stood, his shadow stretching long across the sand. "We must move," he said. "This place will kill us both if we stay." She shook her head weakly. "No. Leave me, I will only slow you down. I do not want your kindness." But he crouched beside her, looking straight into her eyes. "I will not leave you," he said. "Whether you want it or not, you are not dying in this desert." Her breath caught in her throat, fear and anger flaring inside her chest. "You don't understand," she cried, her voice breaking. "I am cursed, I am empty, my people were right, I am nothing, why fight for me?" The human's hand tightened into a fist, his eyes hard as stone. "Because you are not nothing," he said, his voice rising with sudden fire. "You are alive, and that is enough. No one has the right to decide your worth but you." Her eyes widened, his words striking deep like arrows. For so long she had believed the voices of her people, the scars on her skin, the cruel pit that had almost become her grave. Now here was a man, a stranger who looked at her not as broken but as someone who mattered. It scared her more than death because it meant there might be something beyond the pit, beyond her shame. She turned away, curling into herself. Her voice trembling as she whispered, "Even if you carry me, even if you give me food, I will never be whole, never be worthy." The human stood slowly, lifting his pack, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Then I will walk beside you until you see it yourself," he said. "I will not leave you buried in their lies." Her tears spilled silently, soaking into the sand beneath her face. The desert stretched endless before them, but for the first time, She felt the faintest pull forward. The refusal of life was still inside her, heavy and sharp. But his stubborn presence pushed against it step by step, word by word. He was forcing her to see that maybe, just maybe, she had not been thrown away by the universe after all. The fire burned out, the wind carried the ashes into the sky, and two souls began a journey together, one refusing to give up, and one refusing to believe she could be saved. Yet in that clash something was being born, a story greater than the desert, greater than shame, a story that had only just begun. The desert was endless, a sea of gold under the burning sun. Each step was heavy, each breath dry, and the horizon never seemed closer. The human walked forward with steady determination, his pack on his shoulders, and the alien woman leaning. Weakly against him, her legs trembled, her body fragile, yet he did not let her fall. She hated herself for needing him. Every time he offered water, her pride screamed to refuse, but her thirst forced her lips to drink. Every time he broke bread. For her, shame burned in her chest, yet her body reached for it. She told herself it was only survival, nothing more. Still, when night came, and he built a small fire to keep away the cold, she found herself watching him in silence, wondering why he had not left her behind. One evening, as the sky burned orange, she finally asked, "Why do you carry me?" Her voice was soft, almost broken. "You could move faster without me. You could live without me." The human stopped, lowering her gently onto a flat rock. He looked at her, his eyes serious. "I do not carry you because I must," he said. "I carry you because no one deserves to be left alone in the dirt." Her chest tightened and she turned away. His words were simple, yet they struck her harder than the cruel brands carved into her skin. Her people had called her worthless. Her people had abandoned her. But here was a stranger, a man from another world, who refused to see her as useless. It confused her, it frightened her, it made her heart ache in a way she did not understand. Days passed, and they moved slowly across the wasteland. He taught her how to cover her face with cloth to block the sand. He showed her how to dig shallow pits to trap morning dew for water. At first she resisted, shaking her head, saying she had no strength, but his patience wore her down, his steady hands guiding hers until she learned. Each small lesson was like a spark, a reminder that she was not only a burden, she could still do something. One night, under the pale light of the moon, she whispered, "My name is Kara," her voice almost trembling with fear. The human looked at her, surprised, then nodded. "I am Elias," he said simply. The silence after was strange, heavy, yet gentle. It was the first time she had spoken her name in weeks, maybe months. It felt like touching a piece of herself she thought was gone. The journey grew harsher as the days stretched on. A sandstorm rose suddenly, winds screaming, carrying stinging, grains that cut like blades. Elias grabbed Kyara's arm, pulling her close, wrapping his cloak around them both. The storm swallowed the world in gold and red. Kyara clung to him, her body shaking, the noise around them louder than her own thoughts. But in his arms, she felt something she had not known in years: safety. When the storm finally passed, they collapsed in the hollow of a dune, coughing and covered in dust. Elias laughed weakly. Still alive. And for the first time, Kara's lips curved into the faintest smile. Her heart betrayed her again and again, each time he reached. For her, not with pity but with simple care. She felt warmth spread inside her. Each time he looked at her scars without disgust, she felt her chest loosen. But still she fought it, whispering to herself, "Do not hope, do not believe, you are cursed." One evening, when the stars stretched across the sky like silver fire, she asked him, "Do you not fear me?" Her voice was small. "My people cast me away. They said I was marked, unworthy." Elias looked at her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "I do not fear you," he said. "I fear the cruelty that made you believe you are less." Her eyes burned with tears, but she turned away quickly, pressing her face into the sand so he would not see. The road was long, each mile a battle between life and despair. Kara stumbled often, falling to her knees, whispering that she could not go further. And each time Elias lifted her, his arms steady, his voice calm. "Then I will walk for both of us," he said. Those words, repeated again and again, carved deeper into her than the cruel brands on her skin. They carried her further than her own strength ever could. On the 7th night of their journey together, Kara woke to find Elias asleep by the fire. His face looked softer in the glow, his breathing steady. She stared at him for a long time, her heart heavy with emotions she did not know how to name. She whispered into the silence, "Why do you see me as more when I am nothing?" But he did not hear, and she was glad, because deep inside, where she dared not admit it, she was afraid of the answer, afraid that maybe, just maybe, she was not nothing after all. The desert stretched still, endless and merciless, but the pit of shame was far behind them. Now, step by step, mile by mile, Kara and Elias were walking toward something else. Something not yet clear but alive. A bond was forming, fragile like glass, yet stronger than the lies that once chained her. The long road together had only begun, but already the path was no longer walked alone. The desert finally gave way to rocky ground, tall cliffs rising like broken teeth against the sky. Here the wind howled through the stone, sharp and cold, carrying echoes that sounded almost like voices. Elias led the way carefully, guiding Kara through narrow paths where shadows hid between the rocks. She walked slower now, her body still weak though stronger than before. Her steps dragged, her eyes lowered, as if the weight of her shame still pulled her down. At night they found a shallow cave, its walls black with soot from long ago fires. Elias lit a small flame, its glow flickering against the stone. Kara sat close, but not too close, hugging her knees as if to shield herself. Silence stretched between them until she whispered, her voice rough and shaking, "Do you ever wonder why I was left alive, Elias?" He looked at her quietly, waiting. Her eyes lifted slowly, wet with unshed tears. "My people marked me," she said, her hand brushing across the scars on her arms. "They said I cannot bring life, that I am a failure, a burden, so they threw me away." She took a deep breath that broke halfway, her body trembling. "I begged them to bury me, but they chose the pit instead. It was their final judgment, a place for me to rot." Elias leaned forward, his eyes steady in the firelight. "Kara," he said softly, "your worth is not decided by them. Your scars are not your truth." Her breath hitched, and she shook her head violently. "You don't understand," she cried. "My whole life was measured by one thing, to give children, to continue the line, and when I failed I became nothing. Less than nothing, do you see?" Her voice broke, her hands clawing at the dirt beneath her. "They told me every day. They carved it into my body so I would never forget. And I believed them, Elias. I believed them." The human's chest tightened. With anger at the cruelty she had suffered, he reached out but stopped, giving her space. His voice was calm, steady, like stone against storm. "Kara, you are alive. That is enough. You breathe, you think, you fight. You are worth more than the lies they branded into your skin." Her tears spilled freely now, dripping onto her hands. She had never heard words like these before, words that saw her as more than failure. The fire crackled. The wind whispered through the cave, carrying the sound of her quiet sobs. For a long while, neither spoke, only the silence between them filled the space. Finally, Kara lifted her face, streaked with tears and dirt, and whispered, "Why do you speak to me like I matter?" Elias looked at her with a gentleness she had never known. "Because you do," he said simply. Those 3 words cut deeper than any knife, not with pain but with healing she did not want to believe. Her heart thudded in her chest, her breath uneven, as if those words alone had cracked open the cage inside her. That night, Kara lay awake long after Elias had closed his eyes. She turned his words over and over in her mind. "You do." They echoed like a whisper of worth, fragile, but impossible to ignore. For the first time since she was cast away, she wondered if there could be more to her than the scars. But fear gripped her. Fear that believing such words would only break her again. So she pressed her hand to her chest and whispered to herself, "Do not hope. Do not believe." The next day they climbed higher through the cliffs. Kara stumbled often, her legs weak, but Elias was always there, his hand steady at her back. When she fell, he lifted her. When she slipped, he caught her. Each touch burned her with shame, yet also filled her with something warm. She wanted to scream at him to stop, yet her heart begged for him not to let go. At midday, they rested in the shadow of a stone arch. Kara looked at Elias and whispered, almost afraid of her own voice, "Elias, do you not see me as broken?" He met her gaze firmly. "I see you as strong," he said. "You survived their cruelty. You survived the pit. You walk still, even when it hurts. That is strength." Her lips parted. Her breath caught. No one had ever spoken such words to her. She looked away quickly, hiding her face, but her heart pounded wildly. The whispers of worth grew louder inside her, fighting against the chains of her past. That night, as the stars spread across the sky like silver dust, Kara sat outside the cave, staring upward. Her tears slid silently as she whispered to the night, "If I am worth more, then why do I still feel like nothing?" The wind answered with silence, but deep inside, a voice lingered. The memory of Elias's words, "Because you do." She touched the scars on her arms, tracing the cruel marks. For the first time she wondered if one day she could see them not as curses, but as battles survived. The thought scared her, yet it did not leave. The whispers of worth had begun, and they would not be silenced again. The cliffs gave way to rolling plains, grass dry and yellow under the sun. For days Elias and Kara walked together, their shadows long on the earth. Each step carried them further from the pit of shame, yet Kara's heart still carried chains. Sometimes she touched the scars on her arms, feeling the cruel words carved there. Other times she caught herself watching Elias, wondering why he still walked beside her. One evening the sky darkened with heavy clouds. The wind grew restless, pushing through the grass, carrying the smell of rain. Elias's eyes narrowed as he looked toward the horizon. "A storm is coming," he said, his voice steady but urgent. Kara followed his gaze and saw the black line moving fast across the land. Fear stirred in her chest, stronger than she wanted to admit. They found shelter in a cave carved into the side of a hill. The air inside was damp, the stone walls smooth with age. Elias built a fire quickly, the flames fighting against the storm that soon howled outside. Kara sat near the entrance, hugging her knees, her eyes wide as thunder rolled through the sky. The storm was loud, wild, merciless, like the judgment of her people all over again. She trembled, not from cold but from memory. Elias noticed and moved closer, wrapping his cloak around her shoulders. "You're safe," he said softly. "The storm will pass." She wanted to push him away, to keep her distance, but her body leaned toward his warmth. Her lips parted, and words slipped out she had not meant to speak. "I do not deserve safety," she whispered. "I do not deserve this." Elias looked at her firmly, his eyes burning in the firelight. "Kara," he said, "you deserve to live, to breathe, to be more than what they told you." Her breath caught, tears rising fast. "No," she cried, shaking her head. "You don't understand, Elias. They were right. I am broken. I am not breeding material. I cannot give life. So what am I?" Her voice echoed in the cave, raw and filled with pain. She pressed her hand to her chest, trembling as the storm outside roared. Elias reached out, his hand resting lightly over hers. "You are more than what they made you believe," he said. "Worth is not measured by the children you give. Worth is measured by the life you already carry inside yourself." Her tears spilled freely, running down her cheeks. No one had ever said such words to her. No one had ever given her worth outside of her body. She leaned into him, her forehead pressing against his chest. The sound of his heartbeat filled her ears, steady, strong, unlike the chaos inside her. The storm raged, but in his arms, she felt a strange quiet she had never known. Hours passed, As the rain hammered the earth and lightning cracked the sky, the fire burned low, shadows dancing across the cave walls. Kara lifted her face, her eyes glistening in the dim light. "Why do you not turn away?" she asked softly. "Why do you not leave me when even my own people buried me?" Elias's eyes met hers, his hand brushing the tears from her cheek. "Because I see you," he said. "Not what they wrote on your skin. Not the lies they left in your heart. I see you." Her chest ached, her breath shaky. The storm outside seemed to fade, replaced by the pounding of her heart. She had spent her life believing she was unworthy of love, unworthy of touch. Yet here was this human, holding her as if she was precious, speaking to her as if she was more than her scars. The firelight wrapped them both in warmth, the storm sealing them together in the cave. Kara trembled, not with fear now, but with something deeper. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that maybe she could be more. But doubt still clawed at her, whispering cruelly in the back of her mind. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "If I am not broken, then what am I?" Elias's answer came steady and clear. "You are Kara, and that is enough." Her tears came again, but this time they were softer, lighter, not filled only with pain. She leaned closer, her face inches from his. The fire crackled, thunder rolled, and in that fragile moment something sparked, not born of pity, not born of duty, but born of connection. Her lips touched his, trembling and unsure, yet real. Elias did not pull away. He held her gently as if she was both fragile and strong. The storm outside roared one last time before it began to fade. Inside the cave, a new storm had begun, softer but powerful. Kara's heart raced as she clung to Elias, afraid of what it meant but unable to let go. For the first time in her life, she felt not like a curse, not like a burden, but like someone who could be wanted. The pit of shame was far behind her now, and in this cave, in the arms of a human, she had found a spark she thought she would never feel. The storm had passed, leaving the earth damp and quiet. The air smelled of wet stone and grass, the cave walls glistening as drops of water fell from the ceiling. Kara sat by the dying fire, her cloak wrapped around her shoulders, her mind. Restless, she could still feel Elias's arms around her, the warmth of his lips, the way he had spoken to her as if she was not broken. Her heart trembled with every memory, yet fear pressed heavy in her chest. Days turned into weeks as they continued their journey. The land shifted from barren plains to valleys where rivers trickled between rocks. Food became easier to find, water more abundant, and Kara's strength grew. She no longer stumbled with every step, though sometimes she leaned against Elias. He never let her fall, never spoke a single word of complaint. But something else was changing inside her, something she did not understand. At first, it was only small things. Her body felt heavier than before, her stomach uneasy in the mornings. She thought it was weakness, thought the long road was breaking her again. But Elias noticed before she could hide it. "You look pale," he said gently one morning as she knelt by the river washing her face. She shook her head quickly, forcing a small smile. "It is nothing. The walk is long, that is all." But it was not nothing. Her nights became restless, her hunger sharper, her body restless in strange ways. Kara kept silent, hiding her fear, for she could not believe what her body whispered to her. She remembered the words burned into her skin, the judgment of her people, not breeding material. She could not be carrying life. It was impossible. It was a lie her body played on her. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in red and gold, Elias cooked a small meal over the fire. Kara sat close, her hands pressed to her stomach. Her eyes distant, Elias watched her quietly, then asked, "Kara, what troubles you?" She froze, unable to answer. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "If I told you, you would think me mad." Elias leaned closer, his voice calm. "Then, let me be mad with you." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks before she could stop them. Her voice shook as she whispered, "I feel something inside me, Elias. Something alive. But it cannot be. It cannot." for I was cast away. I was cursed, I cannot bring life. She pressed her hands harder to her stomach, shaking. It cannot be real. It cannot, I am nothing but empty. Elias's eyes widened, his breath catching. But instead of disbelief, his face softened with awe. He reached out, gently covering her hands with his own. Kiara, he whispered, what if they were wrong? Her head snapped up, her eyes wide and afraid. No, she cried, her voice breaking. Do not give me hope, Elias. Do not break me again. I cannot bear it. I cannot. But Elias held her hands tighter, his gaze steady. I do not give you hope, he said. I give you truth. If you feel life inside you, then it is there. No scar, no mark, no words from them can erase it. Her sobs shook her body as Gelb. She leaned into him. She wanted to deny it, to push away the possibility, yet her heart longed for it. For the first time in her life, she dared to imagine that her body was not cursed, but chosen. Days passed, and the signs grew clearer. Her strength wavered, her body shifted, and slowly Kiara stopped hiding. One morning by the river, as sunlight glittered on the water, she placed Elias's hand gently over her stomach. Her voice trembled as she whispered, It is true. I can feel it, Elias. I can feel life inside me. His eyes filled with something fierce, something bright. You are not barren, he said with certainty. You are a mother. The word struck Kara like thunder. A mother. She had begged for the dirt, begged to be buried, believing her body was only a vessel of shame. But now, against every cruel word, against every scar, she carried life. Her tears came again, but these were different, soft and filled with wonder. She clutched Elias's hand to her chest, whispering through broken sobs, I thought I was nothing, but you gave me more, you gave me everything. That night, under the stars, Kara lay awake, her hand resting gently on her stomach. The whispers of her people haunted her still. But now another voice rose above them, a voice that said, You are more. A voice that said, You carry life. And for the first time, she did not feel cursed. She felt chosen. The pit of shame was far behind her. The woman who once begged for death now held a new beginning inside her. And beside her sat the human who had refused to leave her in the dirt. The gift she never expected had become the gift she needed most. A child, a future, a reason to live. The dawn broke gently, painting the valley in gold. Birds stirred in the trees above, their voices sharp against the quiet morning air. Kara sat near the fire, her hands resting over her stomach, her eyes distant, yet filled with something new. For weeks she had carried a secret weight, first of fear, then of wonder, and now of hope. She was no longer the woman who begged for the dirt, no longer the outcast who whispered for death. She was becoming a mother. Elias walked back from the river, a flask of fresh water in his hands. He smiled faintly when he saw her watching him, though her gaze quickly lowered. You did not sleep, he said gently, setting the flask beside her. She shook her head, her lips curving into a fragile smile. I was listening, she whispered. Listening to what? He asked. To the silence, she said, her hand tightening over her stomach. And to the life inside me. Her voice trembled, but there was no shame in it. Only wonder, only awe. Elias crouched before her, his eyes searching hers. You are stronger than, Kiara, he said. You carried despair for so long, now you carry life. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not bitter. They fell softly, like rain, and she let them flow without fear. Elias, she whispered, I do not understand why. Why me? Why now? He reached out, brushing his rough hand against her cheek. Because you were never what they said you were, he answered. They buried you in lies, but truth has found you. Her chest ached with emotion, her body trembling. Once, she had begged to be buried in the dirt. Now, she longed to see the dawn. Her life had shifted from death to birth, from curse to blessing. The days grew brighter as they traveled through the valleys. Spring was stirring, flowers pushing through the soil, rivers swelling with melted snow. Kara's body changed, slower, heavier, yet her heart lighter than it had ever been. She no longer walked only in shame. She walked with purpose. Sometimes she spoke to the child inside her, whispering promises, to the small life growing quietly. "I will not let you feel the pain I felt," she whispered one night. "You will not carry scars like mine." Elias often watched her in silence. He had seen her at her weakest, broken and begging for death. Now he watched her laugh softly at the river's song, or smile faintly at the first flowers of spring. It filled him with something he could not describe, something deeper than duty, deeper than kindness. Kara was no longer just the woman he had pulled from the pit. She was his companion, his family, his hope. Yet Kara still wrestled with shadows. At night, when Elias slept, she touched the scars on her skin. The words carved into her flesh whispered cruelly, not breeding material. She would close her eyes and press her hands to her stomach, whispering back, "Lies, only lies." And, though her voice shook, she was learning to believe it. One evening, as the sky turned purple and the stars began to shine, Elias spoke quietly. "Kara, do you still wish for the dirt to cover you?" Her eyes widened, the question striking deep. She shook her head slowly, tears rising as she whispered, "No, I do not. I wish to see the dawn. I wish to see this child born." Her voice cracked, her hand pressing over her stomach. "I wish to live, Elias." His heart swelled at her words. He reached for her hand, squeezing it firmly. "Then we will live," he said. "We will build something new, not of shame, but of hope." The firelight flickered against their faces, and for the first time, Kara's tears were not of sorrow, but of joy. Weeks later, they reached a fertile valley where trees bore fruit and rivers ran wide. The air smelled of life, not death, of growth, not decay. Elias stopped, looking out over the green fields. "This place," he said, "this can be our beginning." Kara stood beside him, her cloak loose around her growing form, her eyes shining. "Our beginning," she repeated softly, her heart filling with warmth. That night under the wide sky, Kara lay with her head against Elias's shoulder. Her hand rested on her stomach, feeling the gentle flutter within. She whispered to the child, to the stars, to the night itself. "I was once thrown away, marked as nothing, but now I carry everything. I carry life, I carry love." Her voice broke, but her tears were sweet. For the first time she believed she was more than the scars, more than the pit. She was Kara, and she was enough. The dawn rose again, soft and golden. Kara stepped forward into the light, her face lifted to the sky. She was no longer asking for the dirt to bury her. She was asking for the future to embrace her. From dirt to dawn, her story had changed, and in the arms of a human, with life inside her, she walked toward tomorrow,